We're getting a live look right here at the Grande Boulevard's S-curve in Tyler. If you've driven in this area lately, you've probably noticed some big changes. There are several new safety elements in place. KLTV 7's Avery Niles shows us the new additions and how the city hopes they will cut down on the number of accidents between Old Jacksonville and Holly Tree Drive.
Every day, there are between 18 to 20,000 vehicles that travel through the Grande S-curve in Tyler. Cameron Williams, the traffic engineer for the city, says a safety study of the road showed a need for safety measures.
We looked at 10 years of data, and there had been around 55 crashes and 3 fatalities in that section of roadway. Not only the damage to and the fatalities and the injuries associated with those crashes, there are businesses like apartments through there that have seen vehicles go through their fences.
The city recently put in a new asphalt surface on the road with a high friction surface that is safer when the road is wet. There are also now signs with LED lighting and new pavement markings that are wider and act as rumble strips.
So some of the things that we saw were really wet weather crashes, and so that pavement surface will give wheels more traction on the roadway and help people stay on the roadway going through that curve. Another thing we saw was nighttime crashes. So those LED chevrons, one, give an indication of the curve and also lighting up as people drive through there.
Williams says the city will continue to monitor the area and document the number of crashes.
If it doesn't see the improvement, then we will come back and look at additional safety measures, but we feel pretty confident that these are going to address those concerns and really improve the conditions out there.
Avery Niles, KLTV 7 News.
If there continues to be crashes, the city says they will work with Encore to relocate an electric transition tower that could be distracting to people traveling along the Grande Boulevard S-curve.